Thank you very much, Mr Speaker. The OECD's Global Outlook suggested the reduction in GDP in the UK due to the current hit of coronavirus. Oh, I'm terribly sorry, Mr Speaker. I do apologise.
Don't worry. Now we come to the Minister to reply with 3 minutes. Minister.
Well, thank you very much indeed, Mr Speaker. And before I start, may I just join all of the words that have been said in praise of Joe Cox during the proceedings so far, and I know many more will be said during today. One thing that colleagues may not know, amidst all the many things they've been told about her, is that she was very fond of visiting my constituency in Herefordshire, in Simmons Yett, and I look forward to a day when many other people can do that following lockdown. Mr Speaker, from the onset of this pandemic, the government's top priority has been to protect the NHS and to save lives. But we've also made it clear that we would do whatever is needed to support people, jobs and businesses through the present period of disruption. And that is what we have done. On Friday, the ONS published their first estimate of April GDP and showed the economy contracting sharply by a record 20.4% on the month. It is clear that restrictions introduced during lockdown, while necessary, have had a severe impact on output. However, it's important to note that the OECD, the OBR and other external forecasters have all highlighted that the cost to the economy would have been significantly higher were it not for the swift and decisive action the government has taken. Measures such as the Coronavirus Job Retention Scheme, CJRS, which has protected almost 9 million jobs and more than 1 million businesses, have helped to limit the adverse impact of the crisis. It's also important to note that the OECD forecast the UK to have the strongest recovery out of all those large countries that they looked at, with an unemployment rate projected to be lower than that of France and Italy by the end of 2021. Mr Speaker, as we are reopening the economy, the government is supporting putting people back into work. Last month, my right honourable friend, the Chancellor, announced that the CJRS would be extended for 4 months until the end of October. From July to October, employers currently using the scheme will be able to bring furloughed employees back part-time. That ensures that the CJRS will continue to support all firms so that no employer faces a cliff edge. Mr Speaker, this remains a very uncertain and worrying time for businesses and employees alike. The government has set out separately the 5 principles that must be satisfied before it makes further changes to the lockdown rules, which will be based on advice received from SAGE. However, I can assure the House that the thoughts, the energies and the resources of the government are focused increasingly on planning for the recovery. We will develop new measures to grow our economy, to back businesses and to boost skills, and I am confident that the United Kingdom can continue to thrive in a post-COVID world.
We now come to Annalise Dodds with 2 minutes.
Thank you, Mr Speaker, and thank you for your kind forbearance at the beginning of this urgent question. I do appreciate it. Now, the OECD's Global Outlook suggested the reduction in GDP in the UK due to the current hit of coronavirus will have been the largest out of all developed economies. The enormity of the economic impact appears confirmed by the claimant count and other unemployment data out today. It seems the slow and confused health response is being followed by a slow and confused response to saving jobs, despite the huge long-term costs of unemployment. Labour has called for an exit strategy, but what we seem to have is an exit without a strategy, including on jobs. So will the Treasury change its one-size-fits-all approach to the furlough and self-employed schemes, which risk additional waves of unemployment? Will it act to encourage young people to stay in education and training and out of unemployment? Will it build on previous schemes like the Future Jobs Fund to support the young unemployed and provide tailored help for other hard-hit groups like older workers? While desperately needed, more support for apprenticeships will not be enough. Will it act now to create the extra support that can't be delivered by current DWP staff, occupied with huge numbers of extra claims? Will the government catch up with other countries which have already announced their stimulus packages, given that many employers are deciding now on whether to retain staff? Will it apply conditions to government investment to include requirements to promote upskilling and re-employment? Above all, rather than a limited budget statement in July, will the government set out the back-to-work budget we need, with a focus on jobs, jobs, jobs?
Well, Thank you, Mr. Speaker, and I thank the Honourable Lady for her questions and comment. I must say, it leaves me, of course, the issues she highlights are of great importance and receive an enormous amount of attention within government and, of course, within the Treasury. But I'm a little surprised by some of the things that she had said. I remind her that the OECD report, in addition to forecasting the strongest recovery, also highlighted the quick and comprehensive response that the government had put in place in dealing with COVID, and it also noted the relative robustness of the UK public finances relative to other countries. And, of course, colleagues are entitled to accept what the OECD says. What I don't think they can do is discount the bits they like and accept the bits or they don't like and accept the bits they do like. When it comes to the Honourable Lady, she refers to the government's response as slow and confused. But I find that very odd. She said to the CBI in April that this scheme is about preventing mass unemployment. It has undoubtedly prevented a worse situation. There's no question about that. She congratulated the government and business and trade unions and said that we saw with the job retention scheme an excellent example of tripartite working. I think she's right about that, but I don't think she can take the line she takes now and disavow those other things that she said in praise of these when Labour was being a bit more bipartisan than it is at the moment, in praise of the government schemes. Finally, she talks about the government adopting a one-size-fit-all approach, but I just remind her of what she said in The Guardian on the 20th of May 2020. She said a more differentiated approach, that is not a one-size-fits-all approach, would admittedly pose challenges for the government. Hard choices would need to be made, including how to deal with difficult boundary issues. She's right. It's also true that the government has adopted a more differentiated approach than she gives us credit for, as witness all the work we've done with the hospitality and leisure industries. So I'm a little confused, but I do think it's important to focus, Mr. Speaker, on the positive achievements of the job retention scheme and the self-employment scheme, which, as she rightly notes, have presented a much worse alternative and I think have been brought into place with great speed and ability by Her Majesty's Revenue and Customs.
Heading to the West Country with Chair of the Select Committee, Mill Stride.